My name is Maren Cole, and I am 33 years old. For 6 years, I gave everything to Reinhardt & Co., the long nights, the half-cold coffee, the endless promises that next quarter things would get better. I was the kind of employee who never missed a deadline, who believed loyalty meant something, until the morning my CEO decided it didn't. It was 9:02 a.m. when she received the email. I wasn't there to see it, but I can picture it clearly, the sterile glow of her office, the sound of her bracelet clinking as she reached for her mouse. Elaine Harwood, Reinhardt's founder, the woman who once told me that loyalty was the spine of every good team, froze when she read the subject line, "Termination of contract effective immediately." Her assistant said her face went pale. She stared at the screen so long the coffee beside her went cold. The email had come from Cascade Dynamics, Reinhardt's largest client. The same account I had built from the ground up. 3 days earlier, she had called me into that same office. I remember the chill in the air, the faint citrus scent from her perfume. "I consider this disloyal," she said, tapping a printed email on her desk. "You interviewed with another company while still employed here." I sat straight, keeping my hands folded on my lap. After 5 years of denied raises, I thought I was allowed to explore options. Her mouth curved, not in kindness. "Security will escort you out. You can collect your things." For a moment, the world blurred. 6 years of loyalty reduced to one sentence. I could have argued, begged, cried, but I didn't. I stood, straightened my blazer, and said quietly, "Good luck, Elaine." Her eyes flickered then, just for a second. She wasn't expecting grace. Now, as she stared at that email from Cascade, realizing what she had lost, I imagined the silence in her office felt heavier than any reprimand, because the woman she'd fired wasn't gone. She was simply working from the other side now, and that's where everything truly began. When I first joined Reinhardt & Co., I believed in Elaine Harwood. She spoke about building a company that valued integrity, a place where effort never went unnoticed. I wanted to believe her needed to. Really, my mother's health was fragile, and her prescriptions alone cost more each month than I could comfortably afford. I told myself that loyalty would pay off in time. The first year, I stayed late almost every night, rewriting proposals, reworking budgets, saving campaigns that should have collapsed. At the annual review, Elaine smiled across her desk. "You've been exceptional, Maren, but this quarter's been rough. Let's revisit your raise after the holidays." I thanked her. I even believed her. By the 3rd year, I had brought in 3 new clients worth nearly $2 million combined. I walked into her office with a portfolio full of numbers charts, projections, testimonials. She listened with that calm, practiced smile and said, "The board's tightening budgets this season. It's not personal. You're one of our most valuable people. Then value me," I said before I could stop myself. Her expression didn't change. "Next year will be different." It never was. Each denial blurred into the next. I saw the new marble floors in the lobby, the company newsletter announcing record-breaking profits, the sleek black SUV Elaine drove into the garage each morning. I saw my own reflection in the glass doors, tired, loyal, invisible. When my mother was hospitalized after a fall, I took work calls from the hallway outside her room. I told her not to worry. I was close to a promotion. She smiled weakly and said, "You've always believed in people too long." That sentence stayed with me. I began to notice things I'd once ignored, the way Elaine's compliments always ended with conditions, the way next quarter became code for never. I started keeping notes, saving emails, not for revenge, but to remind myself that my effort had been real, even if her promises weren't. By the 5th year, I stopped expecting fairness. I only hoped for respect, and even that turned out to be too much to ask. The security guard didn't meet my eyes as he followed me down the hallway. I could hear the whisper of my coworkers behind the cubicle walls low, uneasy, like the air before a storm. No one spoke. No one dared. I kept my steps steady, a cardboard box pressed against my ribs. Inside, it were 6 years of my life, a cracked mug from the first campaign I led, a half-dead succulent that somehow survived every winter, and a photo of my mother smiling under a knitted scarf. I forced a small smile at the receptionist, who looked like she wanted to apologize but didn't know how. "Goodbye, Maren," she whispered. I nodded once. "Take care of yourself." "Jess!" The elevator doors closed between us with a soft metallic sigh. Outside, the morning light felt too bright, almost cruel. I placed the box gently in the trunk of my old sedan, shut it, and leaned against the car for a moment. My badge still hung around my neck, useless now, like a memory that hadn't caught up with the present. When I slid into the driver's seat, my phone vibrated. A number I recognized: Liam Reyes, CEO of Cascade Dynamics, the man whose company I dared to interview with. I hesitated before answering. Maren Cole speaking. "Maren, good morning," he said, his tone warm but direct. "I heard what happened at Reinhardt. Unfortunate timing, but maybe not for you. Can we move our final meeting up to 2 p.m. today?" For a moment, I couldn't breathe. "You still want to meet, I do," he replied. "Some opportunities don't wait for permission. I'll have my assistant send the address." Dress as if it's a conversation between equals, because it is. When the call ended, I stared at my reflection in the rearview mirror. My eyes were tired, yes, but clear. I unclipped the Reinhardt badge and set it beside me. Then I started the engine. The box in the trunk held everything I'd lost. The road ahead might hold what I was finally meant to find. The receptionist at Cascade greeted me with a calm smile, the kind that made me feel less like a candidate and more like a guest. Still, my palms were damp. I had spent the drive rehearsing answers, preparing to justify why I'd been fired that morning for daring to look elsewhere. Liam Reyes met me in the lobby himself. I'd spoken to him dozens of times over the years, always through conference calls, never face to face. He looked exactly as I'd imagined: confident, steady, with that quiet authority that doesn't need volume. "Maren," he said, extending his hand. "You've had quite a morning." I managed a wry smile. "That's one way to describe it." "Come with me," he said. "Let's talk." His office was full of light, glass walls reflecting the river outside. He gestured toward a seat. "Coffee, tea?" "I'm fine," I said, though my voice betrayed a small tremor. He leaned back in his chair. "I'll get straight to it. I heard about the situation at Reinhardt. For what it's worth, I think Elaine made a mistake. That seems to be her specialty," I said before catching myself. He smiled faintly. "You've always been direct. I respect that." He slid a folder across the desk. "This isn't an interview. Maren, we already made our decision." I blinked. "I'm sorry, this is an offer," he said simply. "Director of Strategic Accounts. You'd manage all external partnerships. Your starting salary would be nearly double what Reinhardt was paying you." For a moment, I just stared at him. My throat tightened. "Why me?" "Because every success we had with Reinhardt had your fingerprints on it," he said. "And because you handled today with dignity. Most people would have burned the place down." I let out a shaky breath. I wasn't sure what else to do. He nodded. "Sometimes walking away is the promotion no one could give you." The words landed deeper than I expected. When I finally shook his hand, my old fear dissolved, replaced by something steadier, something I hadn't felt in years. It felt like being seen. That evening, the apartment was quiet except for the faint hum of the refrigerator. The folder from Cascade still sat on my kitchen table, the offer letter inside signed but not yet returned. I was staring at it when my phone rang. Unknown number. "This is Maren Cole. Ms. Cole. Good evening. This is Vera Lennox from Reinhardt's board." Her tone was formal, but beneath it I heard fatigue or maybe regret. "I hope I'm not calling it a bad time." I straightened instinctively. "Not at all. Ms. Lennox, I understand you're no longer with the company," she said carefully. Elaine's decision this morning caught us by surprise. She did not consult the board before terminating your employment. I stayed silent. North River Holdings reached out this afternoon. She continued. They expressed concern. Apparently, you were their primary contact, and they're now reconsidering their contract with us. My pulse quickened. I'd managed that account for 3 years. Losing it would be catastrophic for Reinhardt. Vera cleared her throat. To be transparent, we'd like to correct the mistake. The board is prepared to reinstate you immediately with a 15% salary increase and the title of Senior Account Director. You've been a valuable asset to this company, and we'd hate to see talent like yours wasted. I almost laughed, not out of amusement, but disbelief. I appreciate that, I said evenly, but I've already accepted another position. Perhaps we could discuss it, she said quickly. No paperwork has been finalized yet. I assume I've signed the offer. I replied, I just haven't sent it back. Still, my decision is made. There was a pause on the other end, long enough for me to hear her sigh softly. Would you consider meeting with us in person? Just for closure, I think it would be constructive. Her tone carried sincerity, and maybe I needed closure too. All right, I said finally. Tomorrow morning works. Good, she said, relief softening her voice. 9 o'clock, at the main office. After the call ended, I looked at the unsigned contract again. The door I'd left was opening behind me, but I already knew where I was heading next. I arrived at Reinhardt just before 9. The receptionist, Jess, looked startled when she saw me. Maren, she whispered, glancing toward the hallway. They're all waiting in the conference room. Elaine looks tense. I'll bet she does, I said softly. The door to the boardroom stood half open. Inside, Vera Lennox sat at the head of the table, papers neatly stacked before her. Elaine Harwood was beside her, arms crossed, eyes sharp and defensive. The moment she saw me, she straightened in her chair. Ms. Cole, Vera greeted me warmly. Thank you for coming on such short notice. Please, have a seat. Elaine's voice cut in before I could move. I'm surprised you agreed to return. I assumed you'd moved on already. I have, I said, taking a chair opposite her. But I believe in finishing conversations properly. Vera gave me a faint smile. We appreciate that. I've reviewed your record 6 years of exceptional performance, multiple client renewals, and 3 formal requests for compensation adjustments. It appears none were granted. Elaine's jaw tightened. We manage raises based on long-term projections. She knew that. I knew I earned them. I said quietly. But I also learned something else. Loyalty works both ways. You taught me mine had an expiration date. For a moment. The room was silent except for the hum of the air conditioner. Vera's gaze shifted between us. Maren, the board would still like to reinstate you. With a 15% raise and the title of Senior Account Director, you have our full confidence. I met her eyes. That's generous, but I've already signed with another firm. Elaine scoffed. You think you'll find what you're looking for out there I already have. I said simply. Vera nodded slowly. Then I suppose this is farewell. I stood, smoothing my blazer. It was 3 days ago. Elaine's expression faltered the faintest crack in her composure. As I walked out, Jess met my gaze from across the hall. I smiled. For the first time in years, it felt like the story belonged to me again. 3 days after that meeting, I was sitting in my new office at Cascade Dynamics. The view overlooked the Willamette River, sunlight cutting through the clouds like a quiet promise. My nameplate, Maren Cole, Director of Strategic Accounts, still looked strange on the glass door, but it felt right. Liam stepped into my office with a folder in hand. You ready to review the final draft before we send it? I nodded, taking the document. At the top, the letterhead read Cascade Dynamics, Contract Termination Notice. My pulse steadied as I read the opening line. Effective immediately, Cascade Dynamics will transition its marketing account from Reinhardt & Co. to Meridian Creative. Liam watched me closely. Are you comfortable signing off? I know it's... delicate. I met his gaze. I'm comfortable. It's the right decision. He handed me a pen, then make it official. I signed my name in deliberate strokes, each letter steady. Liam smiled faintly. Professional. Precise. Exactly how it should be. When he left, I sat for a moment, staring at the signature that once would have belonged to someone else's decision. Now it was mine. Across town, that email would hit Reinhardt's inbox at 9:02 a.m., the same minute Elaine had fired me 3 days earlier. I could imagine her face when she read it. The shock first, then the realization. The account she had built her reputation on, gone. My phone buzzed with a message from Jess, the receptionist who had always treated me kindly. She's been in meetings all morning. Everyone's whispering. They say the board is furious. I typed back one sentence. Tell them I wish Reinhardt the best. Then I turned off my phone. There was no satisfaction in her loss. Only clarity. I hadn't needed revenge. The truth had done the work for me. Outside, the river moved steadily, indifferent and strong. I breathed in, let it go, and opened a new project file. This time, the work and the respect would finally belong to me. I spent the next 2 days overseeing the transition with precision. Every file, every client report, every signed brief from the Reinhardt years passed through my review before being transferred to Meridian Creative. Nothing petty, nothing hidden, just clean work, exactly as it should be. Liam stopped by my desk as I finalized the last shipment of data files. You didn't have to handle this yourself, he said. Most people in your position would delegate. I know, I replied, but I needed to finish it the right way. He studied me for a moment, then nodded. You're closing a chapter, not burning it. Exactly. When the final delivery confirmation pinged on my screen, I exhaled for what felt like the first time in years. That evening, my phone buzzed nonstop. Old coworkers, numbers I hadn't seen in days. One read Elaine called an emergency staff meeting. The board is furious. The office is chaos. Another message came from Thomas, one of the IT leads. Half the senior team is polishing their resumes. They said you handled the transition with grace. People noticed. I typed slowly, tell everyone I wish them well. No hard feelings. Then I set the phone face down. There was a small plant on my desk, the same little succulent that used to sit beside my monitor at Reinhardt. When I left, Jess had handed it to me quietly, saying, You kept it alive longer than anyone thought possible. Now it stood in real sunlight near the wide windows of Cascade's office. Tiny white buds had begun to bloom along its edges. I leaned back in my chair and smiled. For the first time, the plant wasn't surviving out of habit. It was thriving because it finally had space and light. Just like me. When Liam passed by later, he paused at the door. Everything settled. Yes, I said. Everything's where it belongs. He smiled. Good. Let's start building what's next. And with that, the last thread to Reinhardt quietly, gracefully, let go. It had been 6 months since I walked out of Reinhardt for the last time. I wasn't planning to pass by that street again. But one afternoon, after a client meeting downtown, my route took me right past the building. The glass facade gleamed as always, but the people behind it were strangers, now new faces, new energy. I slowed at the crosswalk and caught a glimpse of someone sitting where my desk used to be. She looked young, eager, papers spread out in perfect order. I wondered if she still believed every extra hour would matter, if she still thought loyalty could buy respect. Inside the lobby, Elaine walked past with a folder pressed to her chest, speaking quickly to a man in a suit. Her hair was shorter now, the posture the same. For a heartbeat, I thought she might look up and see me standing there. But she didn't. She just kept walking. I felt no bitterness, just distance, like watching a film I'd already finished. The story had played out, and I'd outgrown the script. When I reached Cascade's office later that afternoon, my team was gathered in the meeting room. We closed the North Harbor account. One of my coordinators said, eyes bright with pride. They signed for 2 years. That's great news, I said, smiling. Celebrate it. You earned it. After the meeting, one of the newer hires lingered. Can I ask something? Maren, how do you stay calm when things go wrong? You never seem shaken. I thought of that day in Elaine's office, of the sting of the word disloyal. I smiled gently, because I've already learned what happens when you give everything to people who don't see your worth. Now I make sure I see it first. She nodded, understanding more than I expected. As the team filed out, I caught my reflection in the glass wall, a woman standing steady, not waiting to be recognized, already knowing she belonged. A year passed before I realized how much lighter my life had become. The weight I used to carry the endless pressure to prove, to earn, to please had slipped away so gradually I didn't notice until it was gone. I sat at my desk one quiet Friday morning, the office still humming with early energy. My journal lay open beside a mug of coffee, its pages filled with notes, ideas, pieces of the year that had rebuilt me. On a fresh page, I wrote Elaine called self-respect disloyalty, but leaving wasn't betrayal, it was growth. I looked at the words for a long moment before closing the cover. Liam appeared in the doorway, tapping lightly on the frame. You have a minute always, I said. He stepped in with that same easy calm he'd had the day he first offered me this job. I wanted to tell you in person. The board just approved your promotion Vice President of Client Strategy. You led the most profitable quarter in company history. For a second, I couldn't speak. Liam, I don't even know what to say. Say yes, he said with a smile. You earned it. He handed me the formal letter. I accepted it, but my eyes were drawn to the small box sitting in my drawer, the one I hadn't opened in months. Inside was my old Reinhardt ID card, still scratched at the edges. I held it between my fingers for a moment, tracing the faded logo. When Liam left, I placed the card back inside and shut the drawer gently. The air felt still, peaceful. I stood by the window, watching the city move below the same streets I once walked, feeling invisible, unseen. Now, every step ahead felt like my own. I smiled and whispered to no one in particular. I never needed their permission to rise. The words stayed in the room, quiet but certain, like the beginning of something new rather than the end.